Is there anything from yesterday that you were thinking about after you left the class, after you left the presentation yesterday?
She might not be able to hear us. No?
Call on someone else. Can you make sure that whoever Lisa calls upon knows that we're calling on them?
Yeah, Dr. Yusri Nadini. I think yesterday she said that she has problem with the computer.
The microphone?
Yeah, the mic. And
So
also,
let's go with.
what about
No.
Dr. Raihani?
Everything clear and I understand all the presentation. But about the test seat, I think you mentioned about test seat knowledge, I think. Is it Prof. Lisa?
Prof. Lisa, yes.
Yeah, you mentioned about test seat knowledge, right? Test seat.
Tacit? No.
Yeah, I think one of your punya your model, I think you mentioned about test seat. I think something like that, test seat knowledge. So is it important to the DIMES models if to have test knowledge for entrepreneurs?
The tacit knowledge is the knowledge that people already have, and it comes out when they are connecting to other experiences. So your culture is part of your tacit knowledge.
Okay, so is it important because there are certain people to have set tacit knowledge, right? So is it important or play an important role in DIME models?
So what it is that everybody has their own tacit knowledge. Okay. So it's not a predetermined set of competencies. Mm-hmm. So your students, each of your students has different tacit knowledge based on their education, based on their social standing, based on their previous experiences. So the idea isn't that we are trying to teach them specific competencies or we don't want them to come in with a prescribed, predetermined tacit knowledge that makes them successful. The idea is that we meet the students where they are. They have that tacit knowledge, and our job, and what we're going to talk about today is the facilitation, is to pull out and have them build through the DIME model on their tacit knowledge. Okay. Right? So everybody comes to the class prepared to be an entrepreneur at various levels. And your job as a facilitator is to get the most out of them from where they are, as opposed to saying, you're going to be a good entrepreneur because you have this tacit knowledge and you're not going to be. Right?
So a comment you made that you didn't understand everything, and that's okay that you don't understand everything, but please feel that you can ask me or Professor John any questions. We welcome the questions, just like in the classroom. For teaching the DIME, you really need to welcome questions, because you build on all of those questions. It's not like case study learning. You need the context to come out through the questions and the answers, and then you get more engagement within participants. So it's going back to yesterday's presentation. If you think about how adults learn, we're continuously learning outside of the classroom. So we're trying to bring that into the classroom. And if you think about at your home, whether it's you and a partner, you and a spouse, you and a sister and a brother or family, or in your community, you're continuously building on each other's ideas and having very engaged conversations in order to make things happen around you, to problem solve. And so part of your tacit knowledge comes out when you do that. So questions are really important. Anybody else have a question? I can't see faces. Questions or comments? That's what we need to build upon. Thank you very much for that. That was great. How about Pan Hasbullah? Are you there?
Hasrina Binti.
This one.
And Mohammed Kadri? I can't hear her.
You're mute. Oh, she's muted.
Hi, it's me.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
Hi. So maybe it's a little bit difficult for you to pronounce my name, so maybe you can call me as Wawa.
Wawa? Great. As Wawa. Thank
So
you.
there's a few things that I jot down here regarding yesterday classes. So one of the things is one of the most important thing that do attract my attention is in terms of the uncertainty and ambiguity, right? Because you do mention about the uncertainty and ambiguity, because it is the most important thing that you highlighted is in terms of first thing you must learn from your own mistake and then find something in terms to gain a successful, so you need to learn something from your failure. And then another thing that to attract my attention
Excuse me, as Wawa, I'm just
Yes.
going to ask you if you could slow down. You're speaking too fast for me.
Sorry.
Slow down. I know you're talking about uncertainty and ambiguity, right?
Yes,
You're
certainty
fast.
and also the ambiguity, because I do think that it is one of the most important things. If you want to be successful, you must learn from your own mistake first. First point, very important things lah. And then another things is in terms of the assumption through the actions, because you also mentioned about the idea. You must gain the idea from your own customers in order to present the outcome. To have a very good outcome, first you must know your own target market. As example is your own audience for your own businesses, right? So, and then another theory that you have mentioned yesterday, some theory that are very attractive for me. One of the theory is in terms of the self-directed learning theory. So I do think that it is a very interesting topic, but I do hope that we can learn more about all of these theories that you have mentioned yesterday. So this is from my point of view. Sorry if I'm a little bit fast.
I think the first one.
So go ahead. Dr. John would like to address you the first comment you made about uncertainty and ambiguity.
So why do you think helping students deal with uncertainty is important to entrepreneurial learning?
Because it is my own assumptions. I'm not very sure either it is correct things or not, because I do believe in nowadays trends. Okay, yes, everybody have their own idea in terms of the business, but one of the things is in terms of the opportunity seeking. So if you have the idea and then you have the opportunity, so one of the most important thing is either you want to translate the idea and use the opportunity to do your own business, to become the entrepreneurs, because we know as entrepreneurs one of the characteristics is you must take the risk. So a risk is something that you can't say it is a good thing, but sometimes it can be a very good thing, but it is about the uncertainty. We will never know what will happen in the future. So from the something that you didn't know, the risk that you take, and then you must learn, and then if you have some problem, you must overcome the problems.
Yeah.
So
and so part of the big part of what you said is that there's that risk in that we don't really know if our assumptions are going to work or not.
Yes.
Our business ideas are going to work or not.
Yes.
And the model is set up with that inverted pyramid where you want to get to the granular level. And the reason is that you want them to develop and test their ideas in small iterations. Because if they write a 50-page business plan and spend a whole semester doing it, there's going to be a disconnect between their idea and what the customer actually wants. So the idea is to mitigate the risk by having them test and develop ideas that sort of really quickly. Because if not, you end up going in a way that just isn't successful. And then sort of when you stand back and look at entrepreneurship, 80% of entrepreneurs fail within the first 5 years in the US. And so what you want to do is if they're going to fail, you want them to what we call fail fast. Like develop and test small assumptions before you invest a lot of time and effort. And so those are the two elements that you're dealing with that risk and ambiguity and uncertainty. Now, Lisa will talk a little bit about some of the theories.
One thing I want to talk about assumptions. You bring up a very, very good point about assumptions. This word assumptions, it's taken for granted that we understand what an assumption is. And we may know as teachers what an assumption is. What is an assumption to you?
In my point of view, assumption is something that you might think it is right? And then you might think that your assumption, because each one of us, you have your own opinion. If you have your own opinion, you might think that sometimes that the assumption that you have made in your own mind, it might be true. But actually, if you didn't test it, you will never know that the assumption is right. And then you will never know either the assumption is wrong.
And so when you think about that in the field of entrepreneurship, students come into your class or entrepreneurs come in and they're telling you an assumption, but they present it as a fact. And it's really an assumption. They think that the customers are going to buy the product at a certain price. But they think it's a fact. But often what happens is that they've actually never talked to the customer. So they built up their assumptions in their mind, in their business plan, but never really had that contact. And so the idea is that you aren't telling them that it's a bad assumption or it's a good assumption. Your role as a facilitator is to get them to actually test their assumptions.
Yes.
And that way you're not judging them, you're standing by them, helping them achieve their goals.
Right. With assumptions, I personally find I have to spend a discussion at least in the class, making sure students understand the assumption, because it's not only what they think, but it's also can I do it. So for an assumption, for an example, in a problem solving class that I do is that I can solve climate change in the world, right? So that's a very large assumption. So you really have to bring them down. So there's different types of assumptions. So it's very smart to have a conversation with your students about that, because sometimes and different cultures have different views. So you have a very good idea of what assumption is. So you would be able to explain it to your class. And about self-directed learning. Self-directed learning is where we want to try to get them at, and then we want to go beyond that. If we want to get them out in the real world, making
Okay, can I jump in, or are you good?
I'm just going to turn to see.
Can I finish self-directed?
Oh yeah. Okay. Sure.
So the idea with the self-directed learning and how it applies to the classroom is that the students are the agents of change. And so they're directing their actions. You as a professor isn't saying, my class of 150 people, this week you all need to do prototyping. Some students already have a prototype and they can go try to sell it. Other students are still trying to figure out what they want to develop. And so every student or groups of students in their little direct their actions. And so the dynamic in the classroom changes from faculty-centric, where you are telling them what to do, to student-directed, and they're determining what they need to do to develop and test their assumptions about their business.
Okay, I'm going to add to that. So even though the students are self-directed and developing agency, we still give them a process to follow. Okay, so that's the DIME process. They're being self-directed using the DIME process with their individual skills, KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities. Okay, so it's still important to have a process for self-directed. Okay. Anybody else have comments? How about Dr. Rahman?
I think it's the second name.
Amira.
Dr. Anis.
Anis. Okay.
Yes, a comment.
Do you
I'm
have
sorry.
any comments? We're talking about yesterday's presentation. And
Okay.
Questions or comments?
Questions and comments, they're very important to developing our ideas as teachers.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering what you got out of it, or something that stuck with you from yesterday's presentation.
I'm impressed with the way you're teaching the students, because I already use your approach, which is, I call it as experiential learning. So I ask them to go out there and selling something, and then coming back. Okay, but what interested me about your approach is you ask them to use $1 and grow it. And how it's different from my approach is I didn't ask them to use $1. I just let them use whatever they have, their resources, because I believe that entrepreneur has to be resourcefulness. Okay, but with your way of teaching, I think is better because you challenge the student limits. Yeah. So you didn't limit the student, but you challenge the student limit, because it's very difficult to start a business with $1 rather than you have a $100. It's easier. So that's a very interesting to me.
So there's sort of two reasons for that. One, so part of what you're saying is you let them start a business with whatever they have, which is part of that KSA element of the DIME model. But what I want to do, and this is what you want to do, is you don't want them to spend a lot of money on their first idea.
Yeah.
Because I've had students spend $500 on their first idea, and then they're out of money, and then they're like, I ran out of money. And so the idea is a concept called affordable loss. How little in this weekly iterations is how little can you spend in time and effort and money to develop and test your idea. And so the dollar is kind of symbolic in the US, and I use it also in Latin America, because there's a myth that the entrepreneurial myth is that the entrepreneur started with $1 and became a millionaire. And then the other part of it is, and you don't have to adopt the dollar model, because having people do it with whatever resources they have is fine. But the other thing that I'm instilling on them is I'm trying to mitigate and eliminate the risk. And so I tell them that if you develop and test your idea and it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, because it was my dollar, right? And so you're eliminating because there's a risk, you're eliminating the fear, because $1 is really not a lot of money in the US. And then I'm minimizing it even more by saying it wasn't even your dollar, right? So it's sort of that you're playing on the climate in the class by encouraging them to take a risk, not a crazy risk, but what can I successfully develop and test this week?
Great, thank you for that. Mahmoud, do you have any comments or questions from yesterday or previous sessions?
Sheikh Muhammad just came in. So right now we are discussing about yesterday's class. We are reflecting yesterday's class. So do you have any comments or something on your mind after our session last night? Maybe you can share with us.
Okay, hi everyone. yeah, basically last night was my first full class because for the previous two sessions I wasn't able to attend. But I found those sessions very, very interesting. I can relate to a lot of the content that was shared yesterday, and especially in terms of how entrepreneurs were, the methods of entrepreneurs, how they learn, especially in terms of first-hand learning, how learning by doing is very important, and then and how we can implement that into the classroom. I think it's very, very interesting point. Yeah, I think that's what I can comment for now. And then I also saw a video about we were talking about the video that was not shared a few days ago regarding that $1 experiment.
Yeah,
You said that one?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I had one not experiment. I mean, I had experience with students a few years ago when the TV show The Apprentice was very popular, and then I applied that into my classroom. But instead of $1, I asked the student to use around like $15 so they are free to use that $15 to earn as many profit as possible. So they have 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then they can sell everything. And then at the end of the day, we form another 2 big groups. But the complaint I got from students is that they were very happy with the approach because it's very hands-on. The only problem is that the time they have to spend on that kind of assignments were too much for them. So,
when you say
Yeah.
too much, how much time did they have to spend on the assignment?
Yeah, because one semester we have 14 weeks. So around that 14 weeks, we have 4 assignments, 4 rounds. So basically they have to do the things 4 times. And then the ultimate assignment was they have to go to the farmer's market and then start selling like fish or something like that. So
Whatever they were doing.
That was very interesting.
But I'm interested as to why they thought it was too much time. So how
Yeah,
much time were they spending?
Because in Malaysia, the curriculum, when you develop the curriculum, there are certain limit of time in one subject. So one particular subject with 3 credits, there cannot be more than 120 hours for the whole 14 weeks.
Right.
That's
okay.
That's including independent learning and also face-to-face learning and everything.
So, but what I'm wondering is, was this activity bolted on to your 120 hours? Is that you said 120 hours?
Yeah. I didn't really particularly calculate every minute that they spent,
okay.
but those are the comments that I received from students.
Yeah, so typically so if you're bolting it on to additional, so you have all your work and all of a sudden you bolt this other activity on, the students will say, well, I'm doing my work and you're asking me to do this extra thing. And so within the what we're going to talk about today is their homework is complete the assignment, is to take the $15 and run the business. And so typically in my class, the opposite happens. People are spending a lot more time because it's intrinsic. It's something that they're interested in. And so my requirement is that they spend 4 to 6 hours a week, but they end up spending 10 to 20 hours a week because they really love what they're doing.
Yes, that's the case.
Yeah, the kids.
They love so much. They love to do their things so much that they spend so much time on that.
Oh, so it's not a bad thing.
Not related to the students.
Okay.
I literally have 2 groups of students fighting in my office because they were so competitive.
Yeah.
Like, the lead. They say the leader is doing a wrong decision. They like, that kind of situation I never experienced before, and it's very interesting. But the only limitation is that the time. So a few group of students complain to the team that it's taking too much time. So
Well,
I stopped doing that.
Well, the idea is that just make the boundaries that they should only have to spend the 4 to 6 hours. There's no expectation that they need to spend 20 hours a week.
And
Yeah, maybe.
Let me add one more thing. And so perhaps were you having a competition between the businesses?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the mistake.
Okay.
So by having them compete against each other, you created this vicious rivalry.
Yes.
And so one of the things that happens, and this is part of the how you facilitate, is I've had students that come in, and a true story, a student in 1 week made $1,000 from her dollar.
Oh wow. Okay.
And you have other students who struggle to make $3 to $5, right? And so and you can't compare them. The success of the business isn't who makes the most money, right? Because if that was your trigger if that was your measure of success, you undermine collaboration and cooperation in the classroom. You created sort of this vicious competition in the classroom where I don't want to share with you my ideas because if I help you, I hurt myself. And so we're going to talk about sort of the assessment next week. But the idea is that you're creating a climate, or we'll use the word culture in your classroom, that they cooperate. So you got the first part right, the learning by doing, but you missed the second two parts, right? It's learning from others and learning by working together. And so you need those three elements in your classroom for it to be successful. So the great thing is you tested it, the students really engaged with it. And then what we need to work on is your ability to facilitate that so that it becomes a cooperative learning environment in your classroom. Excellent.
okay,
There's a few other people there, or do you want to move on?
Yeah, no, who else would like to make a comment? Anybody else?
Yesterday's.
Is there anything in the chat, Mame?
No.
Anything from yesterday's presentation that you need to
Clarify, questions, comments before we move on?
what you like the best about Professor Lisa's presentation?
Hi, Dr. Ikhwan just came in. Dr. Ikhwan,
We can start.
we are discussing yesterday's session.
Yeah.
After the class, do you have anything on your mind, something that you want to ask, but you didn't have time to ask last night? You can ask now.
All right. Okay. Actually, I want to share about my program this semester, which is I have to conduct the Entrepreneurial Week for about 560 students. Right. So the challenge is because currently Malaysia have to undergo the restrict moving order, which is all the physical class we cannot be done by physically, so we have to do it online. My strategy is I have given some objective to the students, which is they have to conduct the business through online. All right, and then I do not limit it to what extent they have to do the business, but however they have to do some business plan, all right, so that I can know what kind of exactly that they are doing the business. And then fortunately, all right, the business is very very good, well, which is I able to make about 95,000 for the whole which is about 2 weeks of the program activity. But the problem is, of course, I hope more, because due to some of the students, they might have a restriction, because I also facing the student, they're not able to understand the objective of the business, the objective of this, how to conduct the business without challenge themselves, and then they also do not know how to materialize the sales through online. Okay, because the student I have teach last this semester, the student, they are combining, which is their background is about banking and the logistic. So they have some the mindset, okay, and then I have to what do you call it? I have to to modify or to boost their mindset that this is the time that you try to challenge yourself to do the business. And then in that way also, a part of that, they have like previously last night, I think that Lisa had told us about the formal, informal, and then the another one.
Non-
I can't remember.
Non-formal.
So non-formal. So I think that during the PKP, they have learned a lot of informal learning, which is because the RM, what you call the district movement order, we do not have in syllabus currently. So they have to survive and think creatively and innovate their business, how to make a sale and profit through that one. So that's how lah, how I'm able to manage to that one, right?
Okay, so part of sort of a couple of elements that you talked about were within the sort of the DIME methodology, we don't want them to write a business plan.
Yeah.
We want them to come up with, there's a problem and we want them to come up with an idea to solve the problem.
Yes.
And so deconstruct the expectation of what a business plan is to a problem statement and their ability to try to solve it. And so since you're doing it online, we've done what we call social innovation challenges. So people can try to solve a problem that is selling a product or service to make money, but it also can be solving a problem that is a social entrepreneurship problem in their local community. And so I would just recommend that you expand the boundaries of what they're allowed to do, because what you're trying to do is get people working on things that are meaningful to them.
Yeah.
And then also in the online environment, there's a lot of different limitations. And so you end up with, you know, and this is the same with my online classes at various levels, is the timing might not be right, the access, you know, they might want to work on this business idea, but because of the lockdown, because of virtual classes, they can't. And so ask them to figure out what they can do smaller that they have access and authority to implement. And so those sort of modifications will allow sort of a broader and richer experience through this online modality.
One, it's an interesting 560 students. That's a lot. Do you, how many aides and people do you have helping you?
I have them about 2 people only.
Yep, perfect.
2 helpers.
2 helpers.
So one of the big issues, sorry, excuse me. One of the large issues you have from a teaching perspective is communication.
Yes.
Communication not only from you to the students and being sure that everything is clarified what you want them to do, but also communication skills that the students need to reach out to these businesses. So one of the words we use that often is used in business and entrepreneurship, you'll hear the word hustle.
Yes, hustle.
Okay? But hustle is a harsh word, but if you break it down, hustle means actually speaking to your businesses, your customers. If you're hustling, you know what your customers want. And the only way to do that is through conversation and communication. And so this is a skill that really needs to be developed. And it's hard, but it seems simple and easy, but it becomes complicated. And we're going to talk today a little bit about the entrepreneurial student of today and what makes that complicated. So thank you everybody for the rich insights. I really enjoyed that. I hope everybody learned something very valuable. So I'm going to jump into the presentation and start with just a quick overview of what we're doing. So I'm starting with reflection, and just like the last comments with communication and the ability to communicate, reflection always makes everything better. So reflection is building on experiences. So we're going to jump into next slide. So I'm going to just do a quick introductory story about something that happened to myself. We're going to talk about reflection development, reflective exercises, reflection as an important tool for entrepreneur students as well as instructors. For myself, when I went back to school, I was out of school for a long time. I would be what's called a mature student. I don't know how many of you have mature students in your program, but actually mature students want to be entrepreneurs more and more. So you may find you end up with more mature students. But when I went back to school, a big component of the master's program was reflection. And it was something that I really thought I really didn't know anything about. It's just a common term. Everybody uses it all the time. And it's really a well-used and used approach in education space. And I really was not coming from an education space. So I was coming from a business background and a nursing background. And so what was this reflection? And through my research in entrepreneurship and diving into the literature and understanding the ethnographic part of how entrepreneurs were learning, I was like, oh my goodness, I do reflection. I just don't use the term. So entrepreneurs are continuously reflecting. And just like Professor John said a few moments ago, especially like you have a risk, you have to look at your money, your time, your effort. And so you're constantly reflecting, what can you do now? And what can you do that's going to be the most benefit for an outcome that you want? So you're continuously reflecting on how to make things better. That's what I say, entrepreneurs continuously reflect on how to make things better. So it was a real aha moment for me. And I actually continued to do a self-study where I used 112 critical reflective experiences from my 20 plus years of as an entrepreneur, and the insights I gained were unbelievable. And it really helps to mentor other people. But it's really important to realize that this is a process that if you're actively doing it, and not only as an entrepreneur, but as an educator, really allow yourself to understand the process of reflection, you will be able to help create great entrepreneurs that will last. So that's my little story on reflection. It takes time, it takes a lot of thinking, it takes, like, again, the time, and it's part of reflection is writing as well. So here's a comment about the power of reflection. This is from John Dewey, who's a well-known educator, and really he was the original person who realized that experiences are very important in how we learn. So we don't, the comment goes like this: we don't learn from experiences, we learn from reflecting on the experiences. So if we don't give our students this time to reflect and draw out reflection, they're not going to move forward as well. Entrepreneurs are always on the go. It's like, go, go, go. I've got to do this. I talked about the hustle a few minutes ago. They will continue to make mistakes that they might not need to have to make if they were using reflection. Okay? So a little bit about the role of the instructor and how to establish reflection into our students. So if we want to create entrepreneurs, we need to stop treating them like children. We need to accept the fact that they can have agency and help them become the change agents that they want to be. That's from Dr. Dobson, John Dobson. So we're at a pedagogical component here, and there's not much reflection happening here. And we get a lot of our students will come to us at this phase. So we really have to help them move forward. So then we come to the self-directed area that we spoke about earlier in the discussion before my presentation. How to establish reflection in students. When you get to this stage, you really need to help the students construct their new knowledge, reflect on that learning, that new learning that they're gaining, and then the faculty is facilitating it. And then we move on to, okay. And then some of your students will move on to the self-determined phase where they're very autonomous. And we don't get as many students who move to this phase, especially when we're working with nascent entrepreneurs, like it's their first experiences trying to be entrepreneurs. This is for students who have really wanted to move on and have created that entrepreneurial drive. And instructor here becomes the coach. Okay. Okay, so what is this reflective process? Many of us think we know what it is, but in order to teach it, we need to dive into it a little bit more to help the student become reflective, because entrepreneurs we know are reflective in their learning day to day. So it is a mental process. It's a form of thinking, but that form of thinking is used to fulfill a purpose or to achieve an outcome. That's very important to remind ourselves of this.
We have a question, Professor Lisa.
Yes.
Question just popped up. What's the difference between a coach and a facilitator?
Go back.
No, I have it down further.
Just tell me you have it down further.
I have it a couple of slides down.
Okay.
So I'm going to get to that. So whoever asked the question, thank you for asking it. And I'm going to get there in a few more slides.
Got it. They also mentioned mentor just now, so we'll get to it. Great.
Good questions. Okay, so for the reflective learning to happen, it is applied to an unstructured or complicated idea. If something's simple, we don't reflect on it. We just move through it. But when something's unstructured and complicated, like entrepreneurship, and it's continuous, something you're trying to problem solve through where there's no obvious solution, reflection becomes a big part of what the student needs to do and the entrepreneur is doing. It's reflective learning is based on the further processing of previous experiences, like we talked about yesterday, our previous experiences, all that informal learning that we did really helps us. The knowledge and understanding and emotions you already have, okay, help us move forward. Now, for academic purposes, the reflective learning becomes very conscious, and we ask the student to do it, or we put it into our program. It's embedded into the DIME program. So and then the student knows that they have to do it. And just a quick comment here, reflective learning and reflection, those terms are symbiotic. They're often interchangeable. You will see them used, just so you understand that. So what is reflective judgment? So we're moving a little bit deeper into the idea of reflection. So it's the process by which adults come to decisions and actions in areas of their lives marked by ambiguity and a lack of dependable protocols. It involves scanning, gathering, and appraisal, during which adults learn to recognize the ground for truth, they depend on and the ways in which they come to trust certain knowledge and as reliable and valid. Now, these are from education thinkers who have helped develop what reflection is meant for and help develop how reflection is used. So in order to become critical thinkers, use practical logic, and do critical reflection, this is the judgment process that our students have to go through. And they'll get better and better at it as they use this judgment through the DIME process. So what is a reflective practice? So a reflective practice is the instrumental ways of reflection on the part of professionals and educators to help make meaning and sense out of tacit knowledge, interactions and experiences of their daily practice with learners and clients. Okay, and we mentioned that tacit knowledge earlier. So that tacit knowledge is happening. We have it, we take it with us, our backgrounds, and then we have new experiences and it creates new knowledge. So the objective of a reflective practice, now for you as an educator, this is important that you take time, perhaps after a class, perhaps once a week, and think about what is actually happening in your classroom and develops a reflective practice. And as entrepreneurs move on and become more self-directed and more self-determined, they also have a reflective practice. But it's in the word reflective practice may be invisible to them, but they are doing it. So it's important for us to recognize that. If we miss this component of entrepreneurship, we don't allow the students to develop the way they should develop to be entrepreneurs and lifelong entrepreneurs. So the objectives of reflective practice, it of course improves the practice. It deepens personal understanding and values and ethics because you're able to think through things and have better judgment and understanding working of power in daily practice. So again, this involves both empowering yourself plus the power dynamics that may be happening, and you have to mitigate this power. All right, so reflective learning. Again, the power of reflection for learning and entrepreneurship is also important. And I keep saying that, but it really, really is. So it happens when you take time to reflect on experiences. It happens when reflection is both intentional and unintentional. So intentional is when you're getting your students to go through the process, and you may have them write down in a journal or they may have a journal to take with them, but it's got to be part of how you're getting them to learn. So you're making that intentional for them so that they get used to using it and they understand how important it is. But it's also unintentional. So you'll have an entrepreneurial student who went out, I'll use the last example, when a student may have gone out to a business and reached out and decided that they were going to contact them and find out what their needs were. But they were in a conversation with this business, right? And so the student may have asked 3 very specific questions to this business, okay, and got the answers. But there may have been some conversation in between this question. So 3 days later, the student might say, aha, I remember the person saying they really need to find 4 new employees because they're underemployed. So the student might say that to them, that's unintentional, but that is something that student can reach back out and work on with the business that they reached out to. So we may not initially at the forefront realize something really important, but through reflection, it comes forward. And that's, again, a component that you want to teach your students, that's important. Don't lose that. It's part of understanding the problem solving process. So reflective learning is the process that recognizes the role of social context and experiences. This is extremely, extremely important. Social context many times gets left behind. As teachers, we just don't want to take the time to work on it, but we can allow our students to understand that the social context in their learning and what they're doing in those experiences is extremely important. It's the underlying foundation that brings out their learning. So if we don't try to ask questions and try to pull out more of that social context, then problem-solving solutions will get missed. Reflective learning can be learned by anyone, students, entrepreneurs, etc. But most times it needs to be taught in an academic setting. So to do that, you're using questions. You're moving from who, what, when, where, and why, and how, and you're asking, so what? So you're going from an experience, you have the context. So the who, what, when, you're describing what's happening. And you have take time to analyze it. And then at the end, you say, this is the so what? Next time, what will I do to do it better? And this is the question that real world entrepreneurs are continuously doing. They're saying, how can I do this better? And you will hear students say that, how can I do this better? And you know they're getting it. You know that students are getting that, yes, I can do it better because I reflected on why it didn't work, who was there, what they wanted. I analyzed and realized that I missed this component. And if I do this or help them with that, then it's going to be better the next time I try it. And that's why reflection mitigates risk. It's very important to an entrepreneur. Yeah. So I need them to. So what I want to do is a very, very short exercise here. I have a video. They can watch it now, though. Can we do what we did yesterday?
Yeah. Here, just unshare for a second.
Do
your talk.
There's a short few-minute video on reflection that I use with my students, and I would like you to be able to use with your students and help understand how to use reflection. It's a very simple video. So I would like for all of you to watch this video, and then we're going to have a discussion about this video and working with students and what I'm going to have you do something very specific about yesterday's PowerPoint and get you to reflect on something. So if you could take that like we did yesterday and bring it over. So we're going to share that.
I'm going to put it in the chat. Where's the chat?
I already did, Professor Dobson.
Oh, excellent. Okay, perfect. So everybody watch the video and then we'll have a discussion on it.
Okay.
And Maine, while they're doing that, I'm gonna go to PowerPoint. I'm gonna go to presentation mode and see if we can get that screen bigger.
Got it.
Is that no? I haven't shared the screen.
So everybody else watch that video.
Everybody else watch the video. I'll show you the picture of what you're.
They're not seeing it.
Yeah, so I see your.
It's still the same, right? I'm just gonna go to slideshow.
I can see your desktop is the thing.
Behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see the move?
Now I can't. Now I can see it. It looks like a real present. And then it has slides at the bottom.
It has the slides at the bottom. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is when we go to this mode. Is that better?
If you get, it's small. It's smaller than the original setup.
Really? Because on our thing, it's the full screen.
Yeah.
It's really strange. I'll show
Okay.
you what we have here. It's really strange. It's the full screen. It's this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's just try.
Nope. Yeah, that might be bigger. You see the toggle down there? Does that not let you go bigger on the bottom right?
No,
It exceeds the screen, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
And then when you
Yeah.
go full screen, it brings it down to a different view, right? So this is good. That's perfect right there.
Is that perfect?
That's good.
What
Mhm.
we had before was better.
Just now, what you just now had.
Right now?
No, just before that. So the other
That.
format.
Wait. Yeah. Give her time. I think it's not coming up.
There. Yeah. Yeah. Is that as big as it'll go within that window? That's good.
That can you send me a picture of it?
Mm-hmm. Of course. Got it.
So with this, we can't see anybody.
You never could before the presentation.
Just a little
Yeah.
bit on the upper side.
That's what they see. That's what they're seeing.
Okay.
Okay. So we'll unshare here. Perfect.
Yeah. And that black area at the bottom is where the subtitles are, which is so helpful.
Okay. Oh, is there? Okay. Perfect.
Oh my gosh. If you guys turn it on, you can hear them loud and clear.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay, I need to go to the last slide, to the next slide. So I can ask them to do what I want them to do.
This one.
No, the next one.
We
The
have
next one. No, I'm gonna skip this one. I'm just gonna do this.
Yeah. I would almost just show this. This is what the video was, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
And then I'll quickly go show them.
that's what I would do. Okay.
And your microphone is really good.
Excellent.
Well, that's all good stuff. May,
I love it.
so has it been 6 minutes?
They'll come back when they're done watching it. Let me just go see this video for a second, okay? Yeah.
The wrong one. Yeah.
Just wait. How long is that other video?
4 minutes.
So at this point, we're just gonna watch the second video. That's the one.
No.
That's this one.
But I don't have the right video.
So the video says it's like 3 minutes. So I'm assuming
Okay.
people will be coming back any minute now.
It's too bad. Okay.
So go through them all.
Yeah.
Just put on while we're talking. Are you all done, May? Did you run it?
Okay, done.
Perfect. Okay. I'll share the screen.
Hey, at the same time, done.
Yeah.
Do you want to make sure you're all back?
People anymore.
Is there anyone who has problem with the video? Someone who cannot open the video?
Okay.
Ooh, it rolls on to another video right afterwards. So
Yeah, no, just the one
wanted
video.
the first video. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Can everyone see the PowerPoint slide that I have up with the little cartoon here?
Yes.
All right. So within that video, we have the student. I'm going to just walk through what's happening, okay? You're asking what, when, who, where. So the important part here is that this is descriptive, okay? The descriptive part of reflection is not as important as the next part, okay? So this doesn't take up as much time when you're thinking about what's going on with your reflection. The second part, where you see here this guy with his heart, he's got thoughts and feelings, okay? He's asking why. Why did this happen? How did this happen? And then the so what. The so what is, how can I do it better? Okay? So this is the real reflective part about reflecting. All right? So, so a little bit about, if we think about yesterday's video and the students, I'm just going to run through a quick idea of how you do a reflection. So yesterday's video with the students, we saw a video of students who were being interviewed about their startups. They were young entrepreneurs, okay? And the description is, they were telling us about startups, so that's the when, who, young entrepreneurs, where they were at their places of work, what they were doing was entrepreneurship startup, okay? That's the description, okay? So if we apply thinking about more about what's happening, we think about the past and the things they were saying in the video. We can analyze further from what they told us and what we understand personally, because it's our personal reflection. And then we can look into the future and say, what did I learn from this video about what I'm doing with student entrepreneurs? Okay. So it takes some thinking in this process, and you'll have some thoughts, and then you'll have some feelings about how that video might have made you feel. Okay. So what would you do differently? All right. How can you apply this to your situation? Now, what I've done here is, this is an actual way I would task my students to do a reflection. So in the DIME model itself, there is places during the model where students are being tasked to do reflection. So right now, what I want you to do is reflect. This is for you right now. I want to be clear. Right now, I'm giving you a task to do. I want you to reflect on yesterday's video of the students. I want you...
The entrepreneurship students from South Korea.
Yeah, the entrepreneurship students from South Korea is the video I'm talking about, to be clear, okay? So I want you to, this is what I would tell my students, this is how I'm telling you. Think about yesterday's video, what you learned about informal learning and entrepreneurship. Write a short 3-sentence reflection using the prompts below. So first, a reflection uses I. I want you to use I, first person. This is not formal. It's not a formal writing. It's using the first person I. I want you to support with a thought, emotion, feelings. And I want you as a person to directly connect with what happened when you watched this video. All right. And then I want you to demonstrate, okay? I want you to demonstrate by telling us how this learning has affected your ideas and your future action. What would you do differently? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and I would like every single person to do this because this is what you're going to be asking your students to do. So it's important to understand what's happening with your student by getting you to do it. So everyone take 2 minutes right now. I have 9:12, so at 9:15, we'll come back. So every single person write down 3 lines following this format, and then we're going to discuss it, okay, as if you were doing a classroom. So I'll help you walk through how it works in the classroom. Does anybody have any questions on how this is going to work?
It's on the so the microphone is on. Phrases. So we can see you, May, moving. Okay. I thought the
Okay, it's 9:15. Okay, welcome everybody.
okay.
So I'm just going to start with the way it works on my screen. I see Mohammed, Dr. Mohammed Aziz is the first one on my screen. So I'm just going randomly. Could you please allow us to hear what your reflection was, your 3-line reflection of that video yesterday and the way it relates to you?
Okay, I try my best in order to give it some reflection. I believe I can make. I am again. I do some selling activity or marketing activity in order to get 100,000 profit. But I feel that this is cannot be achieved because I believe that there is some risk I need to consider before I start my business in the future. So I believe that in order to do 100,000 of the sale, I need to understand the market research first, and then understand the product knowledge before I start.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that was not the video I asked you to reflect on. So the video I asked to reflect on was the video that I showed about the 3 young entrepreneurs from South Korea. But I will say that you used reflection process very well. So using the word I and showing how you would move forward. Okay. So this is the type of thing that we want to look for in the students. Okay. So I'm looking for somebody who, thank you. So I'm looking for someone who may have done the South Korea video. How about, who's next? I have Anise, Dr. Anise. Would you please help us and share your reflection? Hello.
Hello.
So
Hello.
were you able to reflect on the South Korean students video?
Hello.
Hello.
Yep. So you can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. I'm moved by the phenomena of young entrepreneur emergence. So I feel happy to see how they survive, and also I can capture one of the entrepreneur that they have the product but they don't know how to sell it. So I can use this knowledge to motivate my students in the future.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Right.
So for our students in our class, so this is kind of just an exercise to get you to think about how is this going to work in the classroom with students. So you're not going to be able to ask every single student, but it's good for other students to hear others' reflections so that we can help them be on the right track, because it's really what I want to say is that reflection is very personal, right? So everyone's reflections are going to be different, what it means to them. So it's nice to share them so students realize that they're all over the place, okay? But that there's meaning. So that's great, meaning that you're able to take that and use that with your students. So who else can I call upon? Professor Neek? Professor Neek, are you there?
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I'm sorry, I cannot open the video because my computer's not working, the video's not working. But can you hear me well?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. I think I'm Nick. Just call me Nick.
Yes.
I mean, based upon these 3 entrepreneurs video yesterday from the Korean videos,
Yes.
I think they are actually passionate into what they are doing. The business they are in, I think they have product knowledge very well, and emotionally they are passionate into what they are doing, and they have confidence, even though of course there are a lot of challenge on the way. So the feelings of risk, the feeling of having challenge to be succeed is partly I've seen in that video. So for my students, I think these are things that we have to embed in them, that when you want to do or become entrepreneur, you have to be passionate into it and have knowledge on what you are doing, and be confident, and of course be a calculator risk. So that's something that I can figure out from the video.
Okay. So you did see the video yesterday of the students. Very good.
Yeah,
So-
but I did. I managed to get the video completely seen, but I didn't continue till the end of your session. But this is the earlier reflection that I can tell about yesterday's. Yeah.
So I'm going to use you as an example, like you and your fellow professors can use in the class, because your reflection is not as personal. You spoke about the students in the video as opposed to speaking about yourself. So reflection is about how the video, the thoughts and the feelings you got from the video. So I'm going to prompt you with a question, say, Professor Nick, how did the video make you feel about the way you're teaching entrepreneurship?
So that is actually what I've seen, or what I saw yesterday, is reflect on what I feel about being an entrepreneur. Has to have that kind of passion, confidence, and emotionally, you have to be into the business that you are in. So that is actually things that I feel of what entrepreneur should be. Or maybe I mistaken about what you expected.
Yeah, so I'm looking for more of a feeling. So if you had a student in the class, I'm just going to use this as an example. If you had a student in the class and they saw the video and they may have saw the first ones who won all the money, and they might feel, I don't feel I can put in the effort to do that. I don't feel I have the confidence. Many times you'll get students to say things like, I don't have the confidence to do this, or I don't have the time and effort to do this, or I feel that this is too hard, or I feel that this is too difficult. So I feel happy. I feel the video made me feel happy because now I know that this is something I can try. So my point is, you want to really pull out feelings, go from their thought, and pull out the feeling so they can get the social context for themselves as to where they fit in a process that's happening. So it's very important that you have them. I want to go back to the presentation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just 1 second. Do I press allow? There you go. I'm just trying to pull up the presentation again. So thank you everyone for those comments. I want to point out that it's really important to use this first person. Have the students say, I felt terrible. I felt great. I didn't really feel. I'll have a student who might say, I really didn't feel anything. It really didn't make me understand anything. I think, and then to them you say, perhaps it'd be best if you watch it one more time so that you can see how it relates to you. What is it that might speak to you? Because sometimes students don't reflect that well. So we have to pull it out of them. But without these reflection moments, it's hard to move forward. It's a real part. There's two things. Reflection is a real part of the dynamics of entrepreneurship. Also, reflection, I'm going to get into facilitation next, but reflection is a very important part of facilitating a class. So whether it's an online class, whether it's an in-person class, it's really important to help pull out these feelings and thoughts and emotions that allow people to see what's happening, because in real life and informal learning, that's what we have. We have social context all around us. It's everywhere. That's in that informal learning, in that social context, that's where the connection is made for an opportunity. That's where you see what's happening around you. So if somebody didn't feel anything, then they don't have any connection to that. So you really have to pull it out. Very important. And the feelings, some cultures, it's very difficult. Some people don't want to talk about. It's more of an internal process, but it's important for you to be able to give these tasks to your students. They're in the workbook with the dime, if you're working with entrepreneurship students, you have to give them time to reflect. You need to allow them to speak about how it is affecting them in a social context. Okay. So this leads to the next slide. So this short discussion, because it's now 9:30 my time. So I see that the time's going and I want to get into facilitation, but I would have liked to hear more people speak. But we're going to, I need to make the point that takes practice. It takes a lot of practice to use the personal pronoun I and to pull it out of students. So practice, practice, practice. And the other component.
Sorry, Professor Lisa, Azwa Siam wants to comment.
Yes, please.
Go ahead. Please go, Siam.
Hi.
There you go. We can hear you.
Go ahead.
Hi.
So, hi.
Hi.
Hi. So it's me again. I'm going to speak it slowly, not faster. So maybe based on the video and what can I do relate with today's video, maybe in terms of the reflections, because based on the previous video, you have shown that if you want to be, in my opinion, if you want to be a very successful in your own businesses, maybe you need to become as an active person. So based on the Korean video yesterday, so I may think that one of the things that they are a reflective person, they are a very active person in terms of, first is they must know what is the problem of the seatbelt. So from the problem that they have, they try to overcome the issues. First is in terms of adjustment of the seatbelt, if I'm not mistaken, and then they come out with the problem solving, and then yes, they do. They solve the problem, and then what does they get as their own feeling is maybe in terms of the self-satisfaction, I think. So this is my point of view.
They get satisfaction. So
yes,
you noticed that about the video and these young women entrepreneurs, right?
yes.
Right? You noticed that they took action and that they're looking to get satisfaction. So how did that make you feel as a woman who teaches entrepreneurship? How did that make you feel? How did that make you feel to watch that video as a woman who teaches entrepreneurship? How did it make you feel?
So as a woman, of course, I do think that I'm very satisfied if I can solve the issues, the problem happen around us. In my opinion, because yes, everyone have an idea, but in terms of interpreting the idea into something that is very useful is very difficult. But they have achieved it. They already done it. And then the best thing is they already solved the problem happen around them also.
So did that part of the video make you feel happy?
Yes, of course. Okay. Because it is to become a very successful entrepreneurs, one of the thing is the self-satisfaction, because you can solve the issues happen around you.
Okay, so your so what is that I can take that to the classroom and I can tell students that they can solve issues. They have the ability to solve issues. Okay, okay, good. Does anybody else want to make a comment?
Maybe Dr. Aziz have some comment to have a further discussion.
Okay. So the real important part is to really bring you into the reflection. Okay. And it takes practice. So I just put a reminder here from yesterday for students to learn like an entrepreneur. Facilitators create learning opportunities that, number 2 is require reflection. The reflection helps you move beyond your assumptions to build new knowledge. Okay. Without reflections, growth will not occur, learning gets halted, and the entrepreneur will not move forward. So a big part of facilitating is being able to help students move forward and reflect on how things have meaning to them. Okay. So now we're going to move into facilitating the DIME process. So the DIME process is an active learning problem-based course. So Professor John went through this, the first two initial workshops. So I want you to keep that in mind. Active learning problem-based course. Okay. So a little introduction. We're going to talk about the student of today and their needs. What is facilitation? What facilitation is not? Today's students learning entrepreneurship, facilitation tools, active learning, and action learning in a problem-based entrepreneurship course. So there's a lot to cover, but we have next week as well. So what do students remember most about a class? Anybody? I'm looking for a volunteer. What do students remember most about your class? Husna, can you call on somebody for me?
Puan Hazrina, you haven't speak today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to share my experience in the class. Because I'm teaching entrepreneurship subject since a couple of years before till now. What I can share is when you ask the question, what do students remember about my class is during the entrepreneurship class, we did so many work program like Dr. Azid said just now. There are so many programs like we have done before, entrepreneurship program. We have done in the simulation in the class, some sort of reflection also, and then what I can say that student might be remember on that thing which is when we for example we have done the simulation after we covered every topic, each topic or every topic in the content in the subject. We ask the student to do some simulation regarding the topic. So
Okay.
and then they would during the simulation they would do some what I can say some role play. So when doing the role play, they will act like a real entrepreneur. So I think that the most thing that the student will remember from my class.
Okay. Okay. So you have a lot of role-based and simulation happening in your class. Okay. Husna, can you call on two more people for me? I want to hear answers as to this question. What do students remember most about a class?
I would like to call Puan Raihani. Dr. Raihani.
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Rai, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
So I have a question. What do students remember most about a class?
Okay, what I can say here, when I ask the students, do some reflection with the student after the class, they just remember about, okay, for example, if I teach them in the class, so I just use or penetrate more on the focus point. For example, the main point in my subject. Okay, and then after class, and then I will ask them about what they remember or what they can explain from the beginning to the end of the class. So they can remember all the point. They can remember all the point, but when I said to elaborate, they can't do that. So they just know the point but can't explain.
So you do a lot of reviewing. You make sure they get the main points. Very
Yeah,
good.
always.
Okay.
Yeah, I must do all that after the class, before we finish the class, dismiss.
Yeah,
So
that's
I will
very-
ask
that's
them.
a-
Yeah.
That's a very important exercise. Okay, one more, Husna, one more person. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I would like to share mine.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you, Dr. Prof.
I guess my students love my class because I always bring them for field trip.
Oh, yes. I
Yeah,
like
so
your
field-
class already.
so the field trip makes them looking forward, for the assignments that when they have to do a real case study, and they have to go to the community and learn about the real things that happen outside the classroom. So that's, I think, why my students choose to choose my classes, because of the field trip.
Okay, good, good. So they remember that. Okay, so you have a field trip class. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the correct answer to this question that's been studied by universities. So the correct answer is they remember you. They remember if you were a good teacher or a bad teacher. That's what they remember most about a class. Not so much all the activities that they did, but they'll remember you, and they will pass that on to other students, and they will say, she was a great teacher. And so the last comment, she was a great teacher. I remember her because she really helped us go to do field work. But they're going to remember how you did it and what you did. And these are the things that students today want from their university classes. It's been studied. So they want lifelong learning skills. They want learning how to use information and knowledge in real world situations and new situations. And in their back of their mind is, will I get a job with this? What I'm learning, is it going to help me acquire a job? And finally, they want to acquire new information. They want the latest information. They want the most up-to-date information. So they're looking to you as the instructor to deliver on these three components, okay? So who are your students? Who are these students who want to have these great teachers that are delivering on those three things? So there's research on students of today, and in America, we call the students that we have in our class today are either millennials or Gen Z, but we just look at the years. These are students from these years and students from here, and these are the students that are filling up our classroom. And these are the types of things that these students, these are actually more characteristics, and these characteristics will come out in the classroom, and we have to work with these characteristics and develop processes that enable the students. So I'm just going to go through some very important facts that have come out of the literature as to why we need to understand our student. So students have a high sense of entitlement. Students have an inflated sense of efficacy. That means that they believe in themselves, but when you go to ask them something, then they say, well, I can't do that. But yet they have a high sense of efficacy. It's superficial. Personally, they want to change the world. They have this was brought up in one of the initial workshops with Professor John, that there's a savior complex. One of the professors brought that up. So students are unable to actually start businesses because they are risk averse. Students have low levels of empathy. Not all students, but a fair number of students have. That's why one of the reasons to bring out the emotion and have them reflect, so that they can relate to other people and the situations that they're in. They cannot cope with uncertainty or failure. And we know this from a lot of students, and that's why we incorporate this into entrepreneurship learning. High levels of narcissism. They think a lot about themselves, and that leads to an unwillingness to take agency. This high level of narcissism leads to an unwillingness to take agency. We want them to take agency of the entrepreneurial process, and because they want to be doing other things that they feel are so important to them, they don't want to take the time for menial tasks that are involved in entrepreneurship to be an entrepreneur. They desire feedback. This is a really important discovery that came out of research, that students desire feedback, but more importantly, they desire peer feedback. So peer feedback, it's like being on, I'm not sure if your students use Facebook or Instagram or WeChat, But all of these social technology components are all they're all looking for feedback from their peers, right? So we need to somehow bring that acknowledgement into the classroom, that we get peer feedback happening so that the students can grow. Learning is not reflective for most students, so it's something we really have to develop in our classrooms if we want to create entrepreneurs. So a risk-averse nature holds their learning back. Many hide behind their technology, and many get paralyzed with real action decisions. So the more, like we're talking, the last comment about going out for field work, it's very important so that they get that real world action. All right, and that's what DIME is all about. Going to move to the next slide. Okay, so our entrepreneurial students of today, this is very important to recognize. If entrepreneurial education is to produce successful entrepreneurs, it may rest upon curriculum that develops such knowledge, skills, and ability necessary to construct students' knowledge and navigate the inherent ambiguity and uncertainty of the entrepreneurial marketplace. And I know I keep repeating this, but it's just so important. So we need to build into the curriculum the time, we need to build in their ability to learn the knowledge, and for entrepreneurs, the money will come. So the time and the knowledge gets put in. So we're facilitating this time and knowledge is a real important part of our facilitating. So in the workplace and in the world out there, in the real world, entrepreneurs need these skills. So these are missing skills that are noted by companies when they go to hire students that are missing. And they're also needed skills that entrepreneurs have to have if they want to be successful. So things like work ethic, teamwork, communication, problem solving, time management, empathy, and being adaptable. So again, these need to be worked into the facilitation process. Okay, so in the case of those missing skills, students want them, even though they may not think they need them or want to put the effort in, they want them. They really want them because they want them in order to become either an entrepreneur or to get a good job in the workforce. And many companies these days are looking for entrepreneurial students. The workforce demands them. Entrepreneurs thrive with them, these missing skills, and leaders are built with these skills. And I'm not sure about where you are, but all over the Americas, universities are fortifying courses and enabling instructors to build these skills in students. It's a huge part of university today. There are components of universities now where they're teaching their instructors and having lunch and learns and having lessons and activities and exercises built into the workday so that teachers can learn how to facilitate classrooms and build these skills in students. So facilitating entrepreneurial learning. So we're getting into the definitions that you asked for earlier. So facilitation, a range of pedagogical techniques whose shared goal is to guide and assist learning processes while encouraging high levels of learner ownership and participation, okay? So you're a guide. Shared goal is to guide. So you're working alongside, you're assisting the learning processes, okay? So facilitating entrepreneurial learning is not coaching and mentoring, okay? So we're going to go through that. Coaching, the definition of coaching, is to unlock a person's potential to maximize their own performance. It is helping them to learn rather than teaching them, all right? So Facilitating is the main component that you need to be doing all the time. Yet, coaching is going to creep into your classroom. It's going to creep in when you're working with individual persons or perhaps a small group, and you're going to coach them on their performance. Something is happening and they need coaching to go through it. Okay? Mentoring is a supportive long-term relationship between an experienced mentor and their less experienced mentee. So in this case, it would most likely be a student. The more senior mentor passes on knowledge and guidance as the mentee grows. So I often get asked for this clarification when I'm doing these workshops, because it is confusing. What is your role? But to be very clear, mentorship, most professors, unless they have a very focused experience in a special area, are not mentoring students. We need to look outside into the community to find mentors for those students in that particular area. They may be doing something in technology. They may be doing something in customer service. They may be doing something in selling. They may need help in certain area, and we need to help them find a mentor or have put that on them to go out to find a mentor. Many students will find their own mentor, and we'll come back to you and talk about that and how well the mentorship is going. Okay? Any questions on those? Because I know that was asked earlier. Any comments and I cannot see the chat. Is there any comments in the chat, or anybody have any more clarification on this?
We're good over here.
Okay. We can come back to it again. So because
Wait, we got one more. Sorry. Only
Okay.
expert in a specific area can be a mentor?
That's correct. That's correct. You're looking for people who have what the student needs. So if the student, whatever area of focus that the student wants to go in, you're looking to help them develop a relationship with somebody. And one very important aspect is all of this facilitating, coaching, mentoring, none of them are about giving advice. All of them are about pulling the knowledge out of the student and help the student conduct the learning themselves. Just want to be clear on that point. Okay. All right, so action learning. I want to bring in the theory of action learning and review it very quickly, because action learning is what the DIME model is all about. Okay. Action learning theory emphasizes learning from and through experiences by working on an actual problem or project and reflecting on those results. So it's a continuous, that's why you need that reflection. That's very important. It's a continuous reiteration of figuring out problems and working on projects. And communication is so very important. So participants work in small groups, usually with a facilitator or coach, to take action on problems while learning how to learn from these actions. So participants can work in small groups, or they work individually for action learning. Action learning builds on the capacity of individuals and systems to learn how to learn. Action learning involves actual real life projects and problems, not simulations or role plays. Okay, so this is a basic component of the DIME model. Okay, so understanding why students are resistant to action-based class. All right, you will find this because students are not used to it. So some of the reasons for students resisting action-based classes is they have old habits from, especially younger students, old habits from high school where teachers were still giving them all the information. They had to write everything and memorize everything. So that's what they know. Most courses are faculty-centered. That's still, that pedagogy of process-based and faculty-centered still exists in most universities, but is we're in Americas, they're working very hard to change that to this type of style that you're learning now. Learning is not the reason why students come to university. Many students come for the social context part of it. That's a huge part. And that social context, we can use that. It's informal learning. We can bring that into the classroom. Many students are risk averse, just like we said earlier, and we can help them mitigate that. Many students realize it takes an extra effort to be action-based, but it takes time. We can change them over to action-based learning. They have a fixed mindset. They're not open to the fact that they can grow in their learning. They're so used to, I can't do it, and we need to change them to, I can do it. You can do it. And another component is they're always looking for an A. So in an action-based class, they don't understand how are they going to get an A. So we're going to talk about assessments next week. All right, so there's 6 key, very important principles of effective facilitation. And some of you, of course, are already using these things. So just to be clear, facilitation is voluntary. You need to have the students participate. Praxis, it has experiences, action, and praxis. Practice. Respect, you have to have respect for one another. We have to respect because there's a lot going on in facilitation. You're pulling out information and we have to value what other people are saying. It's very valuable in the learning process. We learn on top of what other people are telling us. And it helps to question our own assumptions, and that's so very important. Reflection. This again, I can't say enough about reflection, but reflection is a huge part of facilitation. So being able to be use self-reflection in the classroom as you're facilitating is very important to help move people past their assumptions. Collaboration. All right, we're going to see peer-to-peer and group work, very important. And we know from the students that we have today that they value that peer feedback. So it's very important. Nurturing and enabling the self-directed student to move towards self-determined, becoming getting them to feel more empowered. And we do this by helping improve their self-efficacy. All right. So effective facilitation is active, it's critical, and it's purposeful. Okay. Very important 6 key components. All right, so some of the skills, and we don't think of them as skills, but these are things you really need to hone in on, you really need to think about, and one by one, like for myself with students, one by one, I started putting them into my classes so I can get more of the student conducting their own learning. All right, so listen well. This is for people who know, this is called active listening. All right, so you listen well. You can't assume you have something, assume you have something to learn. If you're not listening, you're not going to get it. Something a student says that could be extremely valuable to the rest of the class. Now with listening, you need to realize that it takes a human 3 seconds for the question to get into their head. All right, so give time. Don't expect right away answers. So give a couple of seconds for someone to move on. If they're not sure, then you ask them, we can move on. You have to be the person that realizes if it's time to move on. And just with regards to videos, if you're using videos in a classroom, if you use videos, don't use them, try to keep them 6 minutes or under because students lose the important main points, or if you want to show a part of a video. Listen with intent to understand. Okay, I'm going to go back to the 6 minutes. It's the same with if a professor is just standing there talking. After 6 to 8 minutes, students are done. 6 to 8 minutes is when students no longer are tuned into what you're saying. All right, so if it's something really important, you have to get it in very early on. Listening with the intent to understand and not simply reply. So many of us go into the classroom and we know what the student is supposed to be doing, or we think we know what the student is supposed to do or how the student is supposed to react, but that's not letting the student build their own knowledge. So we have to not just simply reply or react, we have to be open. That's called active listening, okay? So observe the interactions in the classroom. So if it's quiet or noise, if it's too quiet, you might want to use some icebreakers. Icebreakers are where you decide that you're going to do a small activity to keep the students, to get the students' attention back to what they're doing, okay? If there's too much noise, then you have to mitigate that noise and so people can learn. So you need to remain calm and patient. You have to use you. You can't use we. You have to remember we're trying to develop agency with the students. So we want to use you specifically. How did you work with that? What did you do when you did that? Tell me how you made that happen. Tell me what happened with the other people in the room when this experience happened. Tell me how you felt. Tell me what your thoughts were. Always use you. Have students use I for reflection. Both of these are about developing agency. So you have to have, an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. It's a single person. They are developing their own knowledge, skills, and ability. It's up to us to do these small facilitation things that create agency and create knowledge building in each individual. So make necessary changes as needed to the curriculum and activities based on what's happening. You might have to change up to a different activity if it's not working. So at the same time, I'm continuing on with more tips. You need to you're constantly scanning the room, even though you were working over here with a group or with a person, you need to know what's going on over here in the rest of the class. Same thing if it's online learning, you want to know what's happening with the whole group. Prompting, probing, very important, prompting and probing individuals with using WH questions. So I say here, do not use questions that allow a student to say yes or no. That simply ends, and you will not get any information out of the student. It ends. Think about questions for conversation. So how did it work? What happened when? Why did that happen? Yes.
What does WH stand for?
WH is who, what, when, where, why, and how, because there's a H and a W in how. So these are the questions, okay? Okay. All right. So coaching is going to come in and out of your facilitation process because you're supporting individuals in autonomous learning. Encouraging reflective learning, that encouragement. You need to go in there and be smiling. You need to be animated. You need to be happy to be there. Students need to know that you're happy that they're there and that you want to encourage their learning. Some facilitators are very animated. When I get into the classroom, especially in person, I become very animated. Which doesn't really come across sometimes on the screen. Collaborative environment and peer review. Again, that peer review and working together, very, very important to students. They want to be part of that collective learning. So responding to the needs of self-directed learners to enable more and more self-determined behavior in problem solving. So we need to be aware that students are being self-directed, but they're in a process, and we're using that process to help them become more self-directed, to be more entrepreneurial. Can I pull this up? So these WH questions, again, think about them as questions that you use for conversation and questions that you use for reflection. They're interchangeable, and get used to, when I first started doing this, I had like 5 questions that I knew I could use. They were at the top of my brain and I had them ready, and I would be able to draw out students learning because it was something I wasn't used to. I was more used to working one-on-one. And then once I started teaching in the classroom, I had to make myself aware that I needed to have questions. So these questions, I memorized them and they were in my head so that I could keep conversation going. And after a while, you get more used to the ability to ask these types of questions that draw out learning in students. Okay, so here's a little place learners at the center of educational activities, learning. So there's a little component about remember that what you're supporting. Like the objective is you're supporting autonomy, competency, relation, and a growth mindset. This is what we're really after. So all these little things you do to facilitate are all about getting autonomy, competency, making relations, and encouraging a growth mindset. You do want to value the knowledge of all the learners. Everybody, every single person has something to add, even the quietest person in the room. That's why it's important to try and reach everybody. Hard with 150 students, but you might not get it all done in one class, but over the course of a 2-week period, you try to reach out to everybody. It's so very important to value people, very important. So we're monitoring students for greater learning. We need to keep in mind in entrepreneurial learning about the differences in motivation and what's happening. So there's intrinsic motivation. This is where the student earns a reward or avoids punishment. This is what the entrepreneur, how they think, okay? Social motivation, what other people value. Achievement motivation, encourage self-efficacy. So this is what we're monitoring in the students as we're facilitating. This is what we're trying to draw on. Intrinsic motivation, the process of doing something is rewarding. Okay. Now, bringing that all into the DIME process. So we've learned a lot about facilitation here. So the DIME process is designed for students to construct knowledge. So very important. By facilitating in these 3 concepts, by doing, from others, and working together. All right. So by doing, there's idea generation, problem solving, concrete experiences, presentations, reflection. From others, there's peer review, customer feedback. And I want to make a point that facilitators do not give advice. I know I already said that, but I just want to reiterate that. And in working together, we have collaboration, cooperation, and more problem solving happening. Do you want me to comment?
I was going to take over, wasn't I?
Yeah, I'm going to let John take over. Professor John's going to take over at this point.
Okay, so when you're looking at all the material that Professor Lisa presented up until this point, all of that material is invisible to the students. So you understand, and the purpose of the workshops are for you to get a deeper understanding of the facilitation techniques and the value of facilitation in a classroom. When you actually get to the classroom, this is what the students are going to experience. You're going to ask them to come up with an idea. to solve a problem. And then they're going to go out for their homework, is they're going to implement that action. They're going to try to develop their business idea, and then they're going to come back to class and report the outcome. And so within that element, you get the learning by doing, because they are developing and testing their idea with real customers. And then they're also presenting, organizing their thoughts and presenting their outcome to the class. Part of that facilitation, and this is part of why that bullet point is that you're not giving advice or suggestions. You're pivoting the conversation. As one student presents, you call on another student to give insights as to why that student had that specific outcome. So why did that student do well? Or if the student didn't do well, why did the student not do well? And then we have this reflection, which Professor Lisa talked to in great length earlier, where you're facilitating this reflective discussion. And it's just simply by these probing questions that you ask. And then ultimately, at the end of each presentation, you're building the self-efficacy by asking them how they would do it better next time. What did you learn from the discussion? What did you learn from other students' presentations that you can apply to your own business idea? And what you're building is a cohort within your classroom. And so that therefore you avoid examples of previous semesters, what students have done. You also avoid the hero narrative by bringing in successful entrepreneurs to talk about their journey. What you're doing is creating a learning journey for your specific class. And as you're having the discussion, I'm going to expand a little bit on the reflection. As you're having that discussion, you're facilitating the discussion in the classroom. Initially, students will spend a lot of time at the narrative phase. This happened and I did this. And then through probing questions, you can dive a little deeper and ask them what their perception. So you thought it was going to go well, but my perception was going well, and then, my partner never showed up or the customers never bought the product. And so there's the perceptive component of it. And then also you can ask them, well, how did you feel?
We got a question, Professor John, specifically about this. I apologize. It says, but a common situation in the classroom experience for them is that friends won't sincerely comment on their peers. So they just, because they don't want to offend them. So how do they encourage them in a more sincere, beneficial way to get their peers to comment?
One thing so it's how you ask the question, and you don't ask it, was that a great idea? That's a yes, no question. And if someone says, Mame, that was a great idea, you ask, how was it a great idea? And so you're asking them to think deeper. And the other thing is, how could Mame have improved her idea? And so this is the peer-to-peer. So they're helping them build a better solution. And so those sorts of questions, rephrasing the questions, facilitate and encourage the students to give richer feedback. But additionally, sometimes when there's this bottleneck and they're not willing, one thing I do is you reframe the question as you're not criticizing them, you're actually trying to help them figure out how to get it right. And so that's important. And then all of a sudden there's a change in the attitude. It's not I'm pulling them down, is I'm helping them solve this problem. And the students in the class have insights. And so sometimes, if you recall those initial pictures from the PowerPoint that I had, where the student put a picture of a brownie on Instagram and no one responded. And so in that situation, some people you need to bring out from other students ideas that they have that they're reluctant to say about how to make it better. And sometimes they'll say the student needs to do X, Y, and Z. In other words, put a price on it, put your contact information, put the ingredients, whatever it is. And again, the short answer is frame the question that it's not a yes, no. Frame it as in you're helping them do it better next time, because they are going to have to do it better. They are going to have to do it next time. And so it's a whole lot better if they do it, they learn how to do it better. And then part of that creates an accountability where students have to, the self-efficacy part, they articulate how they're going to do it better next time. So and so, and it's hard to articulate how you're going to do it better next time unless someone gives you something tangible that you can do. It was a great idea, doesn't give you anything tangible. So how are you going to do it better puts the ownership on them to articulate how they're going to improve their idea. And then next week, you hold them account for that element. Yes, ma'am.
We had another, more specifically, how do you make them see that the comment is not an attack, or a challenge?
Well, it is a challenge. The challenge that they're facing is they had this suboptimal outcome. So in other words, something didn't work. They have this wicked problem they're trying to solve, and it didn't work. And so part of that element is holding hands, like saying they're giving you a suggestion to improve your idea. And so take it they're trying to help you as opposed to they're tearing you down. And then so you're intervening in the discussion and maybe rephrasing what they say and having it focused on what Professor Lisa said, this growth mindset. So based on that bad experience, if you have a fixed mindset, it's I tried it and it didn't work, therefore it'll never work. A growth mindset is I tried it, it didn't work. How can I iterate or pivot through this cycle, right? How can I iterate or pivot to revise the idea so that the next week I do it, I have a better outcome?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, other teachers will come to my class and they'll say, how did you get the students to be engaged? Okay, so I have a couple of secrets to that. What I do from the very, very start of my classroom is I tell the students that, this is a classroom about experiences and engagement. You will be doing actions in here and you will have to participate. So at the very beginning, they know that. Number two, we know, then we can remind them that people are learning informally. Entrepreneurs are learning informally. And if we get them to think outside of the classroom and forget that you as a professor are standing there because you are the issue for the most part, right? They look at you and say, we don't want to talk in front of the professor because we might be wrong. I don't want to be wrong with my answer, right? So let them know there's no wrong answers, all right? And so the other part is I let the students know that I see them outside together. I see them in the cafeteria and I know they're talking. I know they're talking to each other. So if you can let them know that by talking together in the classroom, collaborating, letting people hear you is richer for everyone. There's much more learning. And this is what entrepreneurs do. Entrepreneurs are always out there being resourceful and asking people for information and wanting to get feedback. So those are some of the tricks that I use for engagement in the classroom.
So I'm just going to add a little bit more. And so you have a classroom and you are calling on people to help unpack the problem. And one technique that I use is if somebody's reluctant to answer, I ask them, I said, if you don't know how to help, who in this room would help? And I put the ownership on them to identify somebody else. I said, you can pass the question on to anybody else you want. And then at that point, some students will answer the questions. Other times students will pass it to somebody else. And so part of that is creating that banter in the class and the expectation early on that you're going to call on them. B, that you're not going to give the answer, and C, that there's no predetermined outcome, in the sense that you are structuring it, but you're in a way that you're getting a better answer, but it's the participants in the class are creating the solution. At the end, you're not saying, well, this is the right answer. The end is, based on what you heard, how are you going to make it better? And it's a little bit awkward at the beginning, but allowing that students to pass the question off to somebody else helps break that awkwardness. And then you're being attentive to what they're saying. So sometimes you may have to rephrase the comment, or you might have to ask another probing question to sort of unpack what they're saying about the solution.
I'm just going to add one final comment that you have to remember these students are not used to this type of classroom, but engagement is so important. At the end, you will get students who will come up to you at the end and say, I've never felt so valued in a class. So think about what that outcome is going to be for that student.
Okay. Any other questions, Mayne?
We're good to go. Keep going.
Okay, so and then additionally, so the bottom three are fairly easy to get to early on, because you can tell, you're reading the room and you're scanning the room, and you can tell if someone's nervous, if someone's excited about what they did, if somebody is dejected. So you can easily get to those emotional, so you can do the narrative and move them beyond that quickly to the perceptive of what they thought was happening, then their emotion of how they felt, and then they start analyzing. And this sort of happens week 3, 4 into the semester, and then they're able to evaluate the time and effort it's getting, and then ultimately they start being much more critical about their individual actions. So not critical in the sense that they're tearing other people down, but they're critically reflecting on their agency in solving this problem. And so as you see these activities in the class address what we've identified as these missing skills. So the work ethic, we're requiring them. And I say, what I say is that when you signed up for this class, it was explicitly stated that you're going to work on your business idea for 4 to 6 hours a week. And so that's the expectation. And the point that we talked about earlier, it doesn't matter if a business makes a lot of money or little money. And so it's not a competition. But what you're looking for is to build perseverance and resilience, or what we ultimately call grit. Because they're going to develop and test ideas that have missteps. They come back and it didn't work. And so you need to build resilience in the students so that they don't give up. And the resilience is, how can you, that 5-step discussion, adaptability. So the fact that they're going to change, tweak their idea, and the power of the videos that you saw of the students is you can see the transformation that they had throughout the semester. That change is good. You're working to improve it, that growth mindset. Through the discussions, you end up with real concrete experiences of collaboration, which allows them to solve problems quicker. That's the power of that discussion, is that somebody in the room knows a better way to do it if their student is struggling. And this is teamwork, peer-to-peer collaboration. And then because they're presenting their ideas on a weekly basis and they're expressing their opinions on how other people can improve it, there's a dramatic increase in communication skills. And then ultimately, because the point about how do you get them to participate and not be critical or not to be, is that you're developing this empathy. And so students that do well have develop this empathy and help other people come along. And then ultimately your problem solving, your own idea that you're trying to develop, but you're also helping other students problem solve ideas that may not be sort of a prominent interest to you, but the skill sets that you use to solve your problems are applicable to help them solve their problems. And then ultimately, what it allows them to do is that the expectation is, what can you do in this amount of time? And so this active classroom through this framework addresses all of these soft skills that we're looking for, that employers are looking for, but ultimately also help people become more successful entrepreneurs. So I'm going to give you a minute to sort of think, reflect, and ask me any questions. Myself, Professor Lisa, Maim, any questions you have for us?
Prof,
Go ahead.
yeah, can you explain a little bit about the differences between reflective learning and reflection practice?
Okay, so for reflective learning, you're getting what?
It's the learning you're getting out of the.
Yeah, the learning you're getting out of something very specific, like an action or an exercise like we did today. I asked you to reflect on a specific thing, and we use the term a lot in academia because you're being very concrete and you're being very specific. Reflective practice is built in. It's like an entrepreneur builds that in their learning. They're doing it all the time, a reflective practice, and they're taking the time to be reflective all the time, in and out of, in and on what their experiences are. Then they're also later on taking stock. They take stock of what's been happening for a period of longer time. Now, in the education periods, in the education field, many teachers are have to present the reflective practice to keep their jobs in some areas of the world. So reflective practice is over long term.
So meaning that the difference between reflective learning is in the short term and reflective practice in the long term, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, that is a difference. So Professor John just wanted to make a point here. Go ahead.
So reflective learning is what you get out of the action of reflection.
The questions.
Reflective practice are the processes that journaling idea. So you might have in our book we have people journal. So that's a practice of reflection. And so those are the structures and processes that you have that encourage reflection. Reflective learning is what you're getting out of that, these aha moments you get out of the practice of reflection.
But the reflective practice is also about the reflections of the learning, is it?
It absolutely is. Yes. But you build a reflective practice. It's more meant for professionals and people who we're teaching students how to be reflective learners. So we're going through the actions. For people who are in a field of study or a professional, they will continue on with this practice and use it to develop better learning in the long run and see how they can do it better over a longer period of time. Does that make sense?
Yep, yeah. It's so reflective practice is more focusing on the professionals or the experts in the area, and reflective learning is commonly around the people that not necessarily professional.
But your reflective learning, though, is built into your practice.
Mm.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay. You're welcome. I know there's a lot to take in. There's a lot of new concepts. There's a lot of new things to learn, but you do them over time. I did them over time. I switched from nursing to business to teaching, and it takes time to develop your skills. And that's okay, especially in the dime model, because you become like a team member. You're working with them, even though you're the facilitator, right? And you're the guide. It's okay not to know the right answer, because you pivot, like Professor John said, and you ask them questions that pull out learning, and you're all learning together. One key component is to, like I had to do, I had to really think about questions, coming up with questions to ask, because that's where the knowledge is. That's what I did as an entrepreneur. I went and resourced everybody I could to find out, you know, how do I do this? And if I needed to go here to figure out the next step, I went and found somebody who had more business skills in accounting, just so I could figure out one simple thing. Or if I had to do selling. So I went to somebody who was a much better seller than I was. Like, you're constantly asking, being very inquisitive, and we need to bring that down take it from the informal learning and into the classroom.
And so what I'll add to that is Husna generously enough has recorded the lecture, so you can watch the lecture. Additionally, the PowerPoint slides are available in our shared document. So the resources are available there. I'm going to just add one more element. And so it's important to understand the theories behind it all. But what I want you to think about is the student experience in your classroom, right? And if you're thinking of the student experience in your classroom, can you see that already? Maine?
Yeah, we can see it. Looks great.
Perfect.
Looks great.
And so this is sort of that point where everything before this is the theory that it's good, it's important, it's good for you to understand. Everything after these two slides is really what the students see. And so when you think about the way they're going to learn is by doing from others and working together. Your role as a facilitator is to have these elements part of what's happening in the classroom. So idea generation, problem solving, having them concrete experiences, having them present, having them through these discussions reflect. And so focus on these parts of it, of the discussion, and the rest of it is the background, foundational, theoretical constructs that you understand that you're applying through these really simple sort of concepts of how entrepreneurs learn, and through this is the classroom engagement framework that you use. And so you're facilitating the discussion through this. And so while it's important to know the various theories, and it's especially when we're doing the writing, because we're part of what we're doing over this course of this year is doing sort of an academic research program. The theories are important for that, but for the students' experience of becoming a more effective entrepreneur, they don't need to know the difference between reflective practice and the practice of reflective learning. They just need to create they need you to create a climate or a culture in the classroom that allows them to become more effective. Excellent. Yes, who's that? You have a question, comment, compliment?
No, we don't.
You're not going to compliment Mame? She did a great job.
Thank you, May.
I'm laughing because she's been in the chat box. There's been great questions.
Yeah. So yeah, excellent. You see how you break the awkwardness by building rapport. But you have, yeah. Any other questions? If not, we'll see you next week.
I'm going to send another video on reflection that breaks it down a little bit more and can be used with your students. I think you'll find it very helpful. So it's step by step. You're learning, and then I think it would be very helpful. Next week, I'm going to talk about assessments, okay? Because assessments, it's a different assessment tool set that we use for the DIME process and action learning compared to a process-based class. So I'm going to be talking about that and do you all use syllabuses? I wanted to ask that question. Who's not, do people use syllabuses? Do you call it syllabuses?
Yes, we have syllabus here in the MK.
Okay, thank you. So next week, then I thought what would be really good is we're going to talk about assessments. Then I want to have an overall discussion. I want people to come to next week's class reflecting on all of these workshops, 4 plus part of next week on assessments, on the DIME model, the process of the DIME model, reflection, facilitation, and come with questions. Please review. And if you want to see more about facilitation, the class that John did with the Harvard group, you can see a lot of facilitation happening in that class if you want to look at some more of that. Okay?
Okay, so that is the 3-hour movie that Mame and I are in that you should rewatch. It's a great movie. So you should be able to watch that, and you'll see the elements of the facilitation that we talked about occurring in that classroom. So it's a demonstration of how you facilitate the classroom. The second thing is, if you want, we're gonna watch for next class. Who's that's gonna send out the link again to the student final presentation? So I'm gonna have you watch them again, and then at that point, we're gonna unpack how you assess an actual student's presentation. Now, this is a final assignment. But because I don't have videos of in-class presentations, it's hard to, we're not going to assess the in-class, I'll explain how we're assessing on a weekly basis. But you've seen 2 final presentations. And so you can look at those videos and think about how you're going to assess those videos, how you would assess that presentation. Excellent.
Is that clear?
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.
See you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
See you next week.
Houston, do you have any questions for me?
Sorry?
Do you have any questions for me?
So for next week, the participant have to watch the 3 hours movie.
No, that was a joke.
Okay.
But they should have. It's a half joke. They were supposed to have watched it before. Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
So they should watch some of it. One student watched 80% of it. Now ask them. We will send an email. Let me back up. We'll send an email. We're going to ask them to watch it, whether they watch 10% of it or at least they're watching the facilitation.
Yeah, the process.
Right. And so the whole thing was about facilitation. So there's an example of how facilitation happens. So yes, send them an email. Ask them to watch the video, and then to think about the facilitation that's occurring. Right. So that's the first part of the class. Next Wednesdays, we're going to sort of, so they should watch some of it, enough of it to ask some questions. And then the other one is those 2 short 8-minute videos on the students. And then we're going to get into the assessment part of it. So tell them it's a great movie, starring. I mean, normally you pay like $10. What does a movie cost in Malaysia? $10. What does a movie? When you go to the movie theater, what does it cost?
In the theater, I think when we convert to dollars, it's about $5.
Yeah, so normally they'd have to pay $5 to watch a movie.
Free.
And now we're giving it to them for free as part of the curriculum.
They can see us.
But I mean, we're here to learn about facilitation. We're here to learn, so you should encourage them to watch it.
Sure.
So is Mem is the actress in the movie?
Mame is the actress. She's the.
Yes, I'm it.
Okay, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
With a beautiful actress. John, Professor John, I have requests for you. Will you be free on the 9th of September? Either 9, 10, or 11th of September?
What time?
Okay, same time. It can be either morning at your side or night at morning at our side will be fine.
What were the dates? 9, 10, 11?
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I want to get one about 2 or 3 hours of your time within that date, because we are having a boot camp or so-called workshops with all the directors of entrepreneurship centers of the university, the whole Malaysia, which is organized by my institute. And I hope that I can introduce you to them. So I open one slot for you, so you can choose which of the date is convenient to you, because the workshop will be held for 3 days from 9, 10 to 11. So either date will be okay with me, and as long as it's into your convenience.
The 9th in the morning is perfect, or the 10th. The 9th in the evening, your time is perfect.
Okay.
Or the 10th in the morning. The 9th in the evening, your time, the 10th and 11th are all fine. So either of those. So 9 in the morning, your time. Oh, wait, that would be Tuesday night. Yeah. So it could be 9 in the morning, your time.
Okay.
Yeah, 9 in the morning, your time. The 9th in the morning, your time is fine.
Which is actually 9 evening at your side, right?
No, that's 8 in the evening, my time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the only time I can't do it is the 10th in the morning, your time. That's the only time I can't do it, because I teach my Harvard class on Wednesday.
I see. Okay.
And Mame can't do it either because she's my TA there.
Okay. But the topic this time is slightly different, because we are focusing on entrepreneurial leaders. So so the theme is about innovation. How entrepreneurial leaders should be innovative, something like that. But I'll give you the synopsis of the workshop.
Perfect.
Then of course I'll just relying on you on what topic that you want to talk about, just to get acquaintance with the point on your side, because we do have speakers in Malaysia, but of course we want to also have different views from the internationals. Yeah.
So how long do I have? Is like an hour or?
Well, like an hour. Like an hour, probably 1 hour or even 45 minutes for your lectures, and the rest of it we open for interactions and question and answers kind of things.
Perfect. So the first, I have a topic that I think will be quite good, which is called, it looks at why sort of CEOs, executives, leaders aren't great entrepreneurs. And then I introduce some tools to help them create a climate of creativity and innovation in their business.
Okay.
So that's the one that I think of. I could do that quite easily in 45 minutes.
All right. Okay. Okay.
So
So thank you very much.
yeah, pencil me in, and we'll see you next week.
Okay. See you then.